to make it today because they're part of a ministry, and so they are out of town on the trip. It's a youth trip. It's an adolescent trip. But I just want to emphasize that being in class is mandatory, unless you really have a legitimate exception. Other than that, you must be in class, and you will see that learning in class is going to be the discussions that we'll have group work today. It won't happen if you're not here. So it's very important that you are here. It's part of the requirements for every course. Which brings me to then what is required. If you're wondering what is it that I need to do in order to pass this program, let me tell you, it's simple, but it does require your commitment in the sense that there is a 50% participation. So if you open up your course syllabus, which I sent, you'll notice that your class participation in textbook reading is 50% of passing each of the courses. And then there is an assignment, and usually the assignment is something we try and make in-house. So you don't have to take it out, except for a couple of courses where it's really just harder to do it here. You have to do it outside, but they're all case-based. We try and teach through case scenarios, so actual things that are happening. We teach concept, and then we go into maybe group work or a discussion on a certain case that we've encountered in youth ministry. And by discussing what has happened with that person, you can actually apply the concepts that you either read in the book or we've discussed in class. So it's very practical. And that's the second deliverable. The first one is participation in reading the books. And the second part, the second 50%, the other 50% to pass the course, is basically the case discussions, the scenarios, the ethical dilemmas that we will go through, and so on and so forth. So today is our first day for the next 8 months. You'll find that the way we pace the courses is that we do a course for about 5 weeks, and then you take a break. Or if not, then you're going to take the next course right away, but your next break is going to be longer, which in this case, we'll have the counseling course, and then I think immediately after we'll start the leadership and management course, and then you have about 3 or 4 weeks off in December, beginning of January. Other than that, you'll have a week or two between classes called catch-up weeks. And the weeks are meant for you to finish up your readings and any submissions that you needed to do for a case study or something that you were a little bit behind that. We try to work with you in order for you to enjoy the learning and complete the program. That's the key. Learn as much as possible. Write your notes down, read the book, ask questions. When you come to do the last course, which is the group work, you're going to be actually the ones teaching us. You'll be teaching, and we ask the coordinators to come and listen to what you have to present in terms of project for youth ministry. And many of these projects have been implemented in ministry, as I said to you before. Today, specifically, I'm going to go through the syllabus for this course. This is the Pastoral Care of Adolescents. And as you can tell, this course has 2 workbooks. One is on the development of adolescents, or called Adolescents. This one is mainly a psychology book. So it's a psychology with Christian integration. What is going on with the development of youth? So we talk about physical and sexual development. We talk about emotional development, social, cognitive, moral, faith development. Then we speak about dynamics of adolescence, personality of adolescence, adjustment theories, principle for healthy families, and family dynamics. The second book, this one is the counseling book. This is the Pastoral Care book. And this one talks about models of counseling, what is biblical counseling, what are skills necessary for counseling, and then you also get to learn skills of counseling and you practice them. The deliverable for this course is your actual in-class counseling to someone who will be playing the role of a youth and an evaluator. So you'll be divided into groups of 3s, and you will take turn. You'll be given cases, and then you will take turn. One will play the role of a youth, The other one will be the counselor or the servant who is counseling the youth over an issue. And the third one of you will be the observer who is marking the counselor. And then you will rotate. And then this is your deliverable, and this will happen on the last day of the course. I have to note that this course has a little bit of an exception as to when it's offered. It's offered today, October 1st. Next week we're off because it's a long weekend. Anytime we have a long weekend, you'll take it off. Anytime there is a major function in the church here, you'll take it off. So we try and, like I said, make it as simple, as straightforward, as easy as possible, so that you can succeed in your learning. Then the week after, so I'm the one giving the talk today and the lecture today, and then I'll come back to you October 15th, and we'll do the second part. And then Father Buttrus will come October 22nd, so the week after. And then the last time, so instead of having 5 weeks, we're going to do 4 weeks, but the last time is going to be a Saturday seminar. And this one is very important. From now, I ask you, make sure you book it off if you need to. Block it, and Abuna Buttrus will be here from 10:30 till 3:30, and we'll have lunch offered for you that day. But it's on that day that Abuna will actually do the testing or the role play. So make sure that Saturday you're available. And that means instead of 5 weeks, it is a 4-week course, but an extended Saturday seminar. Okay, so any questions on the syllabus? I don't know if you had a chance to quickly look at it from the WhatsApp, but any questions that you have on anything I said or on your reading of the syllabus? Anything I can clarify? Yes.
I just have a question. As far as the adolescence portion, what age group does that actually sort of?
Right. Very good. So we're going to actually speak about that today, but I will answer it since you've asked. It's from the age 9 till about 22, 23. Yeah. Adolescence is made up of 3 stages. We'll talk about that today when we speak about social development and faith development. Okay, well, let's just introduce ourselves. I guess this would be the right thing to do and a good thing so we can remember each other's name. I'll start. I'm Father Pishoy, call me Abuna Pishoy. I serve in youth ministry, specifically high school youth ministry. Um, I've uh, I've been really blessed with serving with a lot of servants who are very keen about youth in our church and youth in general. I was part of the group that started the program, and it has been a blessing for myself to be coordinating the program along with other servants like Ayman, Nader, and many of the other servants who are not here today, and yet many of them work from like the background in the background. Many of them work, um, as you will see, to get some nice refreshments for us and work on the syllabus, work on Moodle, and so on and so forth. You should all be on Moodle, by the way. Um, I actually, back in the day when I was still serving in youth ministry, Abuna Angelus sent myself and a couple of other servants to take on a certificate that was offered by the Roman Catholic Church through University of Toronto to take on a certificate in youth ministry. And from there, this idea came, how come we're not offering something in the Orthodox Church that can be helpful to many and can be more affordable? Believe it or not, this whole program is $350. And for students, as you know, we've dropped it to $150 if you're a full-time student. When you study anywhere else, it's in the orders of thousands of dollars to get a certificate in youth ministry. So from there, we got the idea of doing this. And like I said, I've been really blessed with instructors and servants that have served with, and they've served with me. And one thing you can remember me with, so I'm just trying to think. Uh, I love my name. I love my name. It was a name that was chosen for me by Pope Shenouda III. Um, but it was one of the names that I wanted to give him in my ordination, but I didn't get a chance to. He just picked it, so I felt like this was a blessing that he picked that name. And the reason why is because my patron saint is Abu Nabshoy Kamel, who became a saint in the Orthodox Church recently, and how amazing he was and loving towards the youth. He created and caused a revival in the city of Alexandria, specifically because of his service, his ministry to the youth. He attracted many to the church, and he's really a role model for me. That's about it for me. Who would like to go next? Should we go in order? Yes. Gabe? Just say something else. Say who you are and say something that would remind us of you.
My name is Gabriel. Maybe, something that one thing about me is I grew up in this church from when I was like 0 years old till now. That's one thing about me. So yeah, and my name is Gabriel.
My name is Michael. Everyone calls me Mikey. Uh, that's how you can remember me. I'm the Mikey of the church.
Remember,
Maybe you can say one sentence or a word about why you joined YMCP, or like if there was a certain interest or something.
Hi everyone, my name is Philo. I joined this course for two reasons. One being I was curious to see what we were gonna learn. My mom took it years ago, and she said it was nice, so I was like, okay. Second is our old coordinator gave us a phone call and said it'd be a good thing if you guys took the course.
Hi, my name is Catherine, and I joined the program because I feel like it's part of my responsibility to be as educated and aware regarding the adolescents that I serve. And so I feel like that in itself is important so that I could become a better servant.
Hi, my name is Brahani Meskel from the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. And one of the main reasons I'm taking this today is because of Father Dante. He was actually already looking at taking some courses with the Coptic Church, and he invited me to come along with this. And this sort of kind of fits the path
gain some skills that I can utilize. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, Father. I'm Father Dante Alonso. You can call me Dante. I serve in the St. Mary Cathedral, Ethiopian Orthodox for 25 years now. Having said that, I didn't expect to become a priest. It wasn't my dream, to serve, but having a miracle is why I search for the answers. And so many things that have changed my life. But I didn't have a background in the ministry, so I wanted to learn and build my confidence. Although I've been with Ethiopian, but learning the Ethiopian Orthodox second language not easy. So I serve with them, trying my best to learn, also serve in the liturgical in their own mother tongue. So learning the mother tongue, like I said, not easy. But hopefully this ministry can be YMCP or build my confidence in delivering the ministry. Yeah, as I said, I'm weak in my intelligence, so still learning. Hopefully, I can learn a lot. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Jolie. The reason why I decided to take this course is that I've always loved working with kids and I wanted to expand that. And I also know how to deal with adolescents, especially because I feel like it's such a common age that we deal with on a personal level and we need to know how to deal with them, talk to them, and coach them in a positive manner. Hi everyone, I'm Carrie.
This is strictly online.
Oh, Jesus. Okay. Carrie. Over a long time, I was very resistant to doing it because I just feel like I'm not really a good enough example for the kids. Like, I don't feel like I know anything. I don't feel like I'm a role model. I don't feel like anybody should be looking up to me. But I realized that there is a huge divide in our church lately by looking at my cousins and that whole generation. And I felt like it was important for us, it was a responsibility, as you said, to look at the kids and say, we grew up here, we still maintain our values, we're still close to our faith, and we still turned out fine. We're still accepted in our community. And I feel like this course is really important because it teaches us how to do that in the right way. It helps us understand the kids a little bit better. I don't necessarily have any experience dealing with adolescents, I still feel like a teenager myself. So I'm really excited to learn from them.
Thank you. Hi everybody, my name is Freddy. The reason I joined this course or signed up for this course is I've been serving my Sunday school kids for like the past couple of years now, through grade 1 or grade 2. And I've been with them year by year, and this next year they're going to be going into grade 9. And so I wanted to, you don't really get a lot of professional training for how to deal with them and stuff, and so I thought that this would be a good opportunity to better prepare myself for their adolescent years, which will be
Also, like I was intrigued by the thought of learning how to better deal with kids when I grow older and as they grow older as well. And also something that my
find that we're not following the book. We've been working on in YMCP for 10 years. This is our 11th year. And we love your feedback because we build on it. So really appreciate your feedback.
We think of adolescence as a period of transition. That's a key word. Because if you're in transition, what does the word transition tell you? And if you say someone is in transition, what comes to mind? It's temporary, yes. There is a destination. You're going to head somewhere, but you're not there yet. And if you're not there yet, there are changes that are happening, and they're happening quickly, and they're happening. Not only do you have to handle them as an adolescent, but as someone who takes care of the adolescent, you must understand them, or otherwise, because you matured and finished that adolescent stage, you may be expecting that everyone should be with you where you're at. So it's very important that we understand that it is a stressful and yet exciting stage. Yes, it is exciting. People in adolescence are very, active, they're energetic. If you want to start a project, the youth will jump into helping you, but at the same time, they may not be at the responsibility level you think they need to be at. So stressful and yet exciting. Armin Nikolai, who's a psychiatrist at the Harvard Guide to Modern Psychiatry, he commented on adolescence and he said, and I quote him, "The most confusing, challenging, frustrating, and fascinating phase of human development." In his opinion, it's the most challenging, and yet he says the most fascinating. Your own adolescence. So if you can go back to your own adolescence, which was not too far back for most of you, was not too far back. That was different than that of everyone else, even though there were situations that you would find yourself and your counterparts quite similar in regards to. Why is it that your adolescent experience, also what did your adolescent experience depend on? So what shaped your experience, in other words? Tell me about the factors that will shape your adolescent experience. Have shaped them. So friendships, social connections, interconnectivity, connection with other people. What else? Community. So growing in a certain community may shape your adolescent differently than someone else who grew in a different community, Coptic community versus, for example, the Ethiopian community could be different than purely Canadian Western community. What else?
Your upbringing.
Yeah, your home. Actually, family is the number one, influence, because your parents gonna take you from a zero age, as Dave was saying, right, and bring you up in the first 6-7 years where your personality is laid. So the main aspects of one's personality, they're laid within the first 7 years. Now, the personality can be expressed differently later on, but the essence of your personality, first 7 years. No wonder then the first 7 years of your life are the most critical years in establishing the foundation for everything else that gets built on. What else? So we said community, we said upbringing, we said family.
Certain experiences.
So certain experiences that you have encountered or may have encountered as you're growing up until you hit adolescence year and also during your adolescence. So some of you may have encountered, what should I say, like a helpful factor, a person who touched your life in the early years of adolescence that got you where you are today. Or it could have been an incident, something that happened that got you where you are today. And you may think even of people who have a lot of trouble in their adolescence, and you can say, oh, I know why. I remember what happened to that person. And that's why their experience has been shaped differently. Your peer groups, as some of you said, your personality, we talked about that, also your religious beliefs. What you believe in terms of God, the church. What's the meaning of God to you? Who is God to you? The meaning of the church to you, and so on. Also events that happen in the world. So I'm telling you, people growing up in Russia and down in that area where there is war, their experiences of war is going to shape who they become and what type of adolescent experience they'll have. Today, teenagers live in a teenage culture that is radically different from teenage cultures of the past. You know, my younger daughter, she's 18, and she finds there is a difference between her and my older daughter, who is 22. And my younger daughter, who used to always, when she was younger, used to think that, like Maria, her older daughter, she comes from a different world, now is serving younger kids, and she says they're coming from a different world, right? You see, and for me, as someone who's been serving youth, I could tell you, when I first started, the connection that I had with that first group is not the same as the connection I'm currently having with this group. And that's why we have to always think about, that every generation, every culture is different and will impact the social development and also the spiritual development of teens differently. So, as I said earlier, this is a time of physical, sexual, emotional, intellectual, and social change, where a youth is moving from a life of dependence into a life of independence. And both them and their parents are going to struggle. It's just the struggle can look different. It all depends on what's happening in the family, what's happening in the life of the youth at school, what's going on with their friends and their friends group. There's a lot of factors. So when you come and serve a youth and you find that they're not responding well or they're being rude to you, don't jump to the conclusion that they're just rude people. There's many other things going on in their lives. And you're just seeing a projection of that at that moment. So if I'm dealing, let's say, with Philo, for example, and then, Philo does something that I don't like. As someone who has learned about social development and emotional development of adolescents, I should not be sharp in the way I answer back. I should explore what's going on. Oh, Philo, what's going on? Something upsetting you today. I should take actually a step back instead of push. This is, Father, did you have a question? No. So this is a significant change periods. Change, Delta remembers, is a change in the life of people, adjusting to great social pressures, a variety of physical changes. Just yesterday, I was talking about cancellation or canceling, what's it called? Cancel culture. Cancel culture. I was talking to the youth yesterday about cancel culture, and all of them said, Abuna, you have no idea how this goes in social media, in our social media, and how quite impacting it is. Can anyone say, just give a brief description of cancel culture?
It's getting persecuted if your opinion isn't popular.
Yes, and how is that persecution happening nowadays? On which platform? Yeah, social media online, right? But also it could happen in person, and actually it happens in the church. You know, I've been dealing, every year with a bunch of people, girls and guys, who don't want to come to church anymore. Why? Because they've been ostracized by their friends. When I talk to some of the post-uni, so grads, when we first started the service called Connect, and I said, why are some of you not coming to church? Some of them were very clear, said, we don't feel welcomed. There is that aspect of cancel culture where someone can really persecute you and be very aggressive with you on social media just because your opinion isn't the popular one, right? Also at this age, remember your grade 11 and 12 years. How stressful was grade 12 for you? In grade 12, you were supposed to do what? You're supposed to make a decision of a lifetime. And coming from a Middle Eastern culture that puts a lot of emphasis on academia, means what for a youth growing up in the community here? It means that you're going to make a life-changing decision. The decision of where you go to study is actually going to be life-determining. So that's a lot. When we speak about social development, we think of adolescence in that it's divided, or the period of adolescence divided into 3 stages. Something we call pre-adolescence, and that starts at the age of 9 or 10, continues for about 2 years. And then we have mid-adolescence, which is your high school years, age 14 to 18. And then you have post-adolescence, which is also known as late adolescence or young adulthood. And this will be from your late teenage years, 18 to about 22, 23. Why is it important that we know these stages? So you have pre-adolescent, we said ages 9, 10. Then we have middle adolescence, high school, 14 to 18. Then we have late adolescence, 18 to 23. What makes it important that we have these categories? You know that category where it shifts is fluid. Like it could be 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, maybe 14 for some people. Next one could start at 15. But why is it important that we see these different stages? There's actually, yeah, they're transitional, and something actually different happens in them. Physiologically, socially, spiritually. Like we've noticed, for example, that by grade 11, you can pretty much tell if a youth is going to be closer to the church or farther from the church. By grade 11. You can tell something. So if you can build something so well in the younger age, like the preteen, up until the age 15, 16, you can actually make a noticeable difference. Not that people beyond that are beyond change, no, but it's just gonna take more years. They get to grade 12, they're pretty much set in their path. So it becomes important to notice that. Different characteristics, different changes happening under each of the categories. So let's talk about the impact of social development. Physical changes actually have social and psychological implications. The fact that the youth change physically does impact their social life and impacts their psychological life. So teens, they feel awkward. They're very self-conscious about the way they look. They're often dissatisfied with their looks. They're not happy with the way they look. self-confidence and self-worth and self-esteem are key matters when we handle and deal with teens. Peers in locker rooms at school who are sometimes commenting freely about the teen's physical appearance or comparing with each other. As you know, our lockers are open, like people are naked in the lockers, in the change rooms. So they get to see their, their sexual organs. And guys can be really tough with each other. They can throw a comment just because they're, there's always a joker, in the locker. There's always a joker everywhere. And someone will throw a comment and you have no idea how it will impact the person that this comment was thrown at. And them thinking, am I growing normally? Is there something wrong? A girl's the same thing. And these physical changes, they happen, as Abuna Butrus will explain to you. Every person has a different rate of change. Everyone reaches, the optimum level at one point, but it just happens at a different rate. So you see a teenager who is that tall, and you look at him and say, "Oh, Habibi, are you grade 6? When I'm in grade 11." And he's like, but that comment can actually hurt someone, especially if he's standing beside Philo. Right? Philo's tall, as an example, or Mikey, or people who are muscular. These things actually make an impact on the psychology of teens. Girls, the same thing. The way a girl's hair looks, the way, makeup is put. Have you seen how teenage girls use makeup? Where is it coming from? Can you tell me where is it coming from? TikTok. Exactly. Yeah, TikTok. That's right. It's YouTube. They spend. I did a survey amongst the girls. They spend the most time is spent among young teenagers, like 14 and younger, just watching makeup channels. Yeah, and they comment on it, and they comment on each other's appearance, peer influence, and peer pressure. So there are a lot of insecurities of shifting into middle school or high school, new changes. The development of close friendships, hero worship, by the way, teenagers, they want to look up to someone. Yesterday, I was talking to the youth about honoring God and some of the stuff that we listen to that doesn't honor God. I spoke about Cesar yesterday and Rizzi. And were you there, Freddie? No? And they were floored. They were floored when I started talking about those people. They know every lyric. They know everything. They were singing it along as I was reading the lyrics, right? And one of them said, "Abuna, how did you know how to pronounce Sisa's name?" And I said, "I looked it up." I looked it up. But the thing is, they're so involved in looking for people to look up to. And if they look up to the wrong type of people, whether they are conscious of it or not, they're going to do something they're going to copy something from their lives. But that's also a good thing because they can look up to you as their servants. Why we care so much, who do we put in youth ministry? We want the kids to look up to you, to look up to the role model. We want them, when the church is full of the life of the saints, one of the biggest things that impacts the life of youth is reading into the biographies of the saints. And you would notice this in your own lives. If you've read, let's say, a certain biography, like Pope Kyrillos' biography, or someone like Father Arsenian, or any of the biographies that are so well written, people nowadays, they're reading the most popular book among Copts youth that they're reading is what?
Elements.
Elements, right? What's going on in Elements? Well, the writer of Elements has so well and put the story of, I think it's Elijah, it's a fictional story, but it draws from real life. And the youth are really identifying with the character Elijah and the characters in the story because they look up to models, heroes. They are known in their psychological and social development to have something called hero worship. Also, at this age, they go through an emotional roller coaster. More and more teenagers are dating at a younger age. So you can tell with dating at a younger age, they will date more people. And they will go through emotional upheavals. At times, they fear they're on top of the world because they have a special one who likes them. And other times, it just broke up and they're completely distraught and they think actually that death is better than living. Because it's so painful to them, they don't have the social skills yet to handle a breakup. They don't have the social skills yet to handle the drama that happens amongst their friends. They don't have the skill yet, they're learning it. They don't have the social skills to differentiate between what they know is right and how they actually behave. Very common. A teenager will tell me, Abuna, I know that what I typed in my text was completely wrong, but I don't know, I just did it. And then you talk to them, a week later, they still do it. You talk to them 10 times, and they still do it. What's going on? Are they unintelligent? No, no. It's just the pressure around them, the pressure from the text that they receive from one another, the pressure of their friends and their advice to them, and so on. All these things are very important for us to understand when we speak of social development. You know, the verse in the Bible that speaks about bad company corrupts good behavior, that could be taught over a whole program. We're just touching on some of it today. Anxiety is high at this age. They're questioning their parental values. And sometimes parents will, they get a little bit stuck with this one. They get so afraid because they feel maybe their teens is losing their faith. Or maybe that they are going to be atheists. No, not necessarily. They're just testing with the proper love and the proper care, the proper presence of servants and parents. At teenage will rebel, but then will reach their destination. Remember? Transition, reaching destination. Peers, as I said, become increasingly significant. The idea of a clique or to be part of a clique is very important. They don't want to stand out, but at the same time, they want in their own mind to feel they're special somehow when compared to others. I mean, they may not say that out loud, but they feel it. But they don't want to stand out. This is where the mob mentality comes in, where conformity comes in. They want to feel accepted. This is very important in social development. One of the basic needs of teenagers is to be accepted. And so when they get accepted by their friends, and yet their parents are always critiquing them, criticizing them, guess where they feel their loyalty should be? Towards their friends. It's not because they hate their parents, but there is a dynamic at home that is playing against the dynamic outside, where a teenager could be, with all their flaws and all their mistakes, just very accepted by their friend. And yet, the parent who love them very much and out of fear keep telling them, be careful, don't do this. Why did you do that? They're out of fear. I'm a parent and I know what I'm telling you. But then that dynamic gets contrasted with a need called acceptance. There's also another need called belonging. We'll talk about this when we speak about emotional needs. Teenage personality. You can divide up the teens into 4 personalities. The first one is called interactive personality. You won't find this in the book. Almost half of your teens are interactives. They're called interactives. They're highly personable. So as I say these, I want you to think which one you are. Okay? Interactives. Highly personable, focused on relationships, care a lot about relationships, sensitive to others, live with a relaxed approach to problem solving, and tend to be hospitable and minimally influenced by stress. Do you know anyone who falls into this? High in their care for relationship, sensitive to others, live with a relaxed approach to problem solving, they're chill. And they tend to be hospitable and minimally influenced by stress. The second type is called dynamos. And those are a quarter of your teen world. They're aggressive, focus-driven, they're above average in productivity, they're effective problem solvers. They can also irritate others with their high energy, they're competitive, and they have good self-assurance. We'll get there. Stabilizers, they're about a fifth of adolescents. They are marked by consistency, so they're very consistent. They're loyal. They have thoroughness, and they're quite predictable, but they also can be sometimes rigid and not flexible. And may lack some creativity because they care a lot about, just tell me where the rules are and I'll follow. There's not one personality better than the other. It's just the different personalities. And then you have the fourth, evaluators. Evaluators, they're the smallest group of teenagers. They like details and insist on accuracy and completeness. They tend to be perfectionists who put high demands on themselves and others. Tell me, share something with me here, either about you or about someone you know. So I say them again: interactives, dynamos, stabilizers, evaluators.
Who goes first?
Yes, who goes first? Probably the person who will go first will most likely be the dynamos. Okay. You can speak maybe of someone you know who's like a fed.
Can you be a bit of both?
Yeah, you can be actually a bit of many things, but one particular will be the most prominent.
What's the word?
Dynamo. For yourself. And where have you seen, which characteristic in what I read, or which characteristic have you identified that connects with the dynamo personality?
I'm strong in my opinion.
High productivity. Driven, strong, opinionated. Yes, Peter.
I think that they're both a stabilizer and evaluator.
Stabilizer and evaluator. So you like to gather as much information as you can before you make a decision, and you like consistency. No?
Consistency to some extent.
To some extent. So a bit of this. Thank you. Anybody else would like to share, either about yourself, which is fine, which is great if you feel comfortable, or about someone you know? It could be a parent, it could be a sibling, it could be someone you're serving. Then when I said these persons, I know this person.
I can go.
Okay.
My fiance is the first one, and I'm the last one.
Your fiance is the first one?
He's the first,
Okay,
and I'm the last.
so
I'm
he,
super detail oriented, and I really respect details in others, and he's super relaxed. So you can
Okay.
only imagine how wedding planning is going.
yes. Yeah, so what makes it important in your opinion that we understand the different personalities of our youth?
If you understand the personalities, you know what to expect from the youth.
Yeah.
You won't expect something specific from someone that's valuable.
Yes, that's absolutely true. So you have better expectation of what comes out of the youth. Father.
Yeah, I have 5 kids, so all of them are not the same.
Yes.
One is dynamo.
Yes.
Two of them is spiritual.
Yes.
The other one thinks she's capable to do everything.
Yes.
She do
It's
everything
probably
what
high
she wants to do,
productivity.
hard to control.
Yes. Yes.
So I have all that.
Yeah.
What we discussed here, I have them.
And the way one would parent has to actually be flexible.
Yes.
Maybe over the principles that, like, we're not talking content, we're talking process. You gotta be flexible over a process. You're not gonna be flexible over a truth or a principle when you're dealing with teenagers or when we're dealing with children, but you gotta be flexible in the way you change your process.
Yes.
The way you parent, the way you serve. When you come to prepare a lesson, for example, you gotta think of all your personalities, and we actually can, at one point, we'll be talking in another course, we'll talk about learning styles. If you prepare your lesson with your own learning style and ignore the other three, you lose 75% of those who are attending.
I had to adjust myself. It's individual again. Yes. But my best thing to do is to show them I pray every morning, showing them
Yes.
on my own. I leave them alone.
Yes.
I don't tell them pray or yes, I'm the cross here before it's passed by. Yes, I just leave them alone. I'm just doing that over the years. I keep doing that.
Yes.
The two of them, they grow up. One is to become a deacon and become a choir. Mommy is the same thing. It's a little hardcore, but she's very helpful. The other two, the other three, as I say, they're one is dynamo.
Yes.
He wants this and get it done.
Right.
And mommy, I want that, I want to make that. I'm not gonna get married to anybody unless I know they're happy. The other one, like that is like I said, I keep telling them, it doesn't have to be Christian. Make sure when you marry him, make sure he loves you and doesn't hurt you. And if you're getting married, I'm not gonna be there. If you, let's say if you marry a Muslim or any Jewish, I'm not gonna be there. Don't expect me to be there. The reason why I told you that. I'm a dad, I'm a priest. I don't wanna get kicked out of the church. We have the rules in the church. If you wanna get married to their church, you go ahead. But don't expect me to be there. But I can talk to you in the video. That's all I have to say. That's all I have to say. You're happy, you're gonna live with that guy? You're gonna live with that guy, I'm not gonna live with that guy. But you pay for your consequences. That's all I say to them. Think
So
about
I
it.
guess this way of dealing with that personality is gonna be different than your way of dealing with another personality.
Yes.
So on.
So, because I can't tell them, they have to choose their own. I said to them, I brought you up to the extent that I can.
And you
I
give
did my
them the
best.
space to jump into making a
Yes.
decision.
I did my best. So now you guys grown up, you make your own decision. This is who I am. You want to be respected, I respect your opinion. That's all I can say.
Thank you both. Other thoughts, Perry?
I was just gonna say one thing, to go with the point that you're making about how important it is to understand people's personality and kids' personality. Like something we learned in marriage prep is obviously understanding your partner,
Yes.
like understanding their love language, for example, understanding their personality traits, the way that you respond to them and the way that they respond to you when you know what they need.
Yeah.
Rather than what you're providing,
Exactly.
is so important.
And that's the key, the way you learn how to respond to them, not the way you learn how to change them. And this is key with kids. You change by role modeling, your role model for sure, but now you have to understand how to deal with them. Understanding the teen personality will help you
Understand how they're socially developing and understand how you should behave and act around them. Okay, now I'm going to speak about some tendencies here very quickly. The teens have a tendency to be treated as an adult, and yet they do not show you the responsibility of an adult, but they want you to respect them as adults. They don't want you to tell them what to do. They want you to hint and then maybe walk alongside them, help them, comment, but not dictate. They want to be treated as masters, not as obedient or weak servants. They also have the tendency to discover and observe. So you can't just give them the facts all the time. You can get them to discover them. Even in their faith, about their faith, the one thing that really helps teen develop their faith is them discovering their relationship with Christ, not be dictated and told. A lot of teens hurt because they're told you got to come to church this way and you have to sit right here and you have to do that without having a discussion with them and explaining and then let them take the leap. We're not saying not to guide them. We got to guide them. We are mentoring them. But we also have to leave them the space to take that step, because if they don't take that step, we're going to talk about this in a few minutes later today. If they don't take the step to own their Christian faith, and they get to university, what happens? What happens on campus? It's now an open world with a lot of different voices about gods, whether for God, against God, or the multiple gods. And they haven't owned their faith. And when we speak about faith development, I'll expand on that. But they enter into a world that speaks about faith in many different ways when they have only attributed their own faith to their parents. That's my parents' faith. It hasn't become my faith. That process is very important. So there is tendency to self and ego. So that's why they're very sensitive to criticism. Some servants, not intentionally, but some people in the world are just more critical than others. And it's important for us as servants to do a lot of self-reflection. If we are critical, it may be our way to cover up for our insecurity as servants. And when we are critical, joking around and stuff like that, when we're not noticing that this could actually hurt the teens because they're sensitive. So you got to be very careful, very careful. They're also, because of their tendency to self and ego, many times they would criticize their own work. One of the hardest, well, not hardest, one of the most important things to notice about people in general, or teenagers specifically, is something called negative self-talk. You know, that brain of ours is working all the time. And if the brain of ours grew up in an environment that was always encouraging us and always, and I'm not saying this so we can go back to our parents and say, oh, you did this to me. No, no, no. I'm just saying, if we grew up in an environment that was critical, we've developed at a very young age, a voice inside of us called the critic. And that critic is ruthless. When it speaks to you, it really destroys you on the inside. And it keeps saying things like, you're not good. Why did you do this? You're such a failure. And no one hears this voice except us. And we call the critical one the devil, because the devil uses the critic to really hurt you. So it's very important that we understand that they have a tendency to self and ego, and criticism, especially negative self-talk, is something that we have to be very sensitive about and aware of so we can actually help our teens at the core. Tendencies for humor. They love to laugh. They love to have fun. They make use of humor as means to a social status and so on. Tendency to rebel, criticize, and reform. Yeah, almost every year we start a service, I get a group of teens that say, Abuna, we want to change something about the service. And that's amazing. But imagine we are rigid and say, okay, what do these people know? But the idea of youth serving youth is a great idea, where they can bring in their understanding of the service. They want to reform, they want to change things, they have the energy, and so on and so forth. So let me now move to talk about understanding teens' emotions and how that relates to caring for them. So I'm gonna give you like gadgets. One for anger. So those gadgets in the car where if the lamp turns on, or like the speedometer, if it goes up. So I want you to think of that as an imagery. One for anger, one for anxiety, one for shame, and one for sadness. Those are the four major emotional status that a teenager or a human can go through. Let's speak of them again. Anger, anxiety, sadness, and shame. When you think about anger, if you see an angry teenager, think of goals, okay? What's happening to the goal of the teenager that's causing the anger needle of that, of that gadget to go up? What's happening to the goal? If they want something, but it is blank, then anger will go up. Versus anxiety. What happens to the goal of a teenager that causes anxiety? How about shame? How about sadness? So what can you tell me about this? If anger is high, what's happening to the goal or the objective of that teen? What do you think is going on? What's that, Father? Yeah. What tells you what's causing the anger to go up? Huh? Frustration. Yes. Something is happening to the goal, though. I want us to focus on the goal. Let's say the teen wants to go out with their friends tonight. That's their goal. What will happen? What needs to happen to that goal for them to get angry? Yes. Yes, it's blocked. Who's blocking it? Their parents. Or let's say they got sick and now they're missing out on the greatest party ever. They are angry. At whom? Themselves. Or at God, who caused them to be sick. We become irrational. They become irrational. But so when you see anger growing or going high, think a goal must be blocked. How about if you see anxiety going up? What's happening to the goal? So the goal is for them to get into med school. But they're getting so anxious around application time. What's going on with the goal? They're overwhelmed. They're stressed. Why? There's something behind it. Huh? So decisions around the goal is getting closer. But what are they thinking about getting to med school? Huh? You're not good enough? Nervous about, well, yeah, but so slice it thinner. When you're nervous about something, what's going on with that something that's causing you nervousness? Exactly. You're uncertain about the outcome. What if I don't get to med school? What if I don't get to school? What if I don't this? What if my friend gets it and I don't get it? It's all about uncertainty. So anger means the goal is blocked. Anxiety means the goal is uncertain. How about sadness? What's happening to the goal that caused sadness? Yeah, the goal is gone. The goal is gone, or you can say the goal is lost. So now I'm sad. You know, I got all my rejections. It's lost. This year it's lost for me. Or I tried out for the basketball team and I didn't make it. So it's lost. Versus anxiety is going to happen before they try out. Right? Or anger is going to happen if they're not allowed to try out. One is blocked, one is uncertain, one is lost. How about shame? And I wanted to leave shame at the end because that is so critical. Shame. What's happening to the goal when the shame needle is going up? What's that?
Me would be like if I didn't get into med school and then right now
The goal is popular. the goal is out there, and you have failed in it. So when there is failure, shame and failure, but the important thing for us to understand is that failure is a social construct. What do I mean by social construct? Yeah, when I say failure, the definition of failure is a social construct for the most part. Of course, there is absolute failure, but I'm talking about the general failure that causes people shame is a social construct. What do I mean by social construct? Yeah.
The idea of failure is something that society has created to make one feel that they have attained what they are aiming to.
Yeah. It means that the definition that I'm holding on to, as far as what makes me a failure, has been constructed in my mind based on society and what I've accepted from society. And so there's no wonder then two teenagers can sit with each other And one would say, I'm such a failure because I didn't get into the basketball team. What a shame. And the other teenager would say, it's okay, you can try again. I didn't get accepted. It's not the end of the world. Two teenagers. One, failure is constructed as, I must be very bad. I must be such a bad player. How, what type of a person doesn't make it to the basketball team? That's a construct. It's important they understand, and we understand it's a construct because that means you can construct it differently. No wonder when Christ started, his salvation on the cross, and he died on the cross and resurrected, death started having a new meaning. The cross that was so shameful became an honorable sign. Do you see this? Jehovah's Witness, as I've told some of you before, will knock at your door and say, if someone kills your dad with a dagger, will you take that dagger and make it out of gold and silver and put it around your neck? And as a Christian will say, what are you trying to say? He says, well, the cross is a symbol of shame, and now you're putting the cross around your neck and you're happy with it. Say, come, let's speak about that with St. Paul's letter, who spoke about the cross being a paradox. To those who don't believe, it's shameful, it is foolishness, but to those who believe, it is glory and honor. I just want you to understand that a lot of the definitions that make people tick are just social constructs that we believe so much in that they almost become, actually they do become our reality. But what happens in Christianity is an illumination of the mind. Christ comes, and the Holy Spirit, when he comes on people and dwells in you, illuminates your mind, changes those social constructs that are blocking your life. And one of those social constructs is shame. And we live in a very shaming society. How come you didn't look like that? You must not be good enough. But we as Christians, we have started to believe in that stuff. Our youth are bombarded with this day in and day out. Our role as servants is then very clear. Is to help these people, the young ones, grow to have an illuminated mind with the Holy Spirit, and to understand that what they've thought and defined and believed to and worshipped as shame is actually not shame. It's a social construct. And that becomes freeing. Okay, let's take a break and come back and do faith development. So we'll take 10 minutes break. So we'll start back at 4:30. But before we do take the break, any questions? You are dying for the break, and I'm dying for the break as well. So let's take the full 10 minutes. 4:30, I'll start again. Anger. Of what is needed for spiritual development. And we're going to do some biblical digging into the biblical text. But the first thing I want to say is that we've noticed over the years that adolescents are stuck spiritually in what is known as mid-adolescence, which is preventing development of faith to be strong enough to sustain them after they leave their parents' home. And it's preventing them from accepting the faith taught to them by parents or by previous generation as being their own faith. So in other words, being stuck in mid-adolescence is a sign of quote-unquote immaturity in faith. And so we wonder, what is going on, or what needs to go on to help the adolescent own their faith, live their faith, and not feel like they are far from what their parents' faith is like. What is mid-adolescence? It's between early and late adolescence. You find early adolescents like junior high, grade 6s, grade 5s, grade 6, grade 7. You give them a whole bunch of stuff to memorize, they memorize it. You give them to be involved in the church, they're in the church. You you do whatever you do. They're very in it. Then they come to high school or they enter into mid-adolescence, and there's always this testing, as I said. There is this testing. Is this for me? Do I like this? Is this mine? Do I own this? Do I want this? Because as you know, adolescence is the time for identity, for finding out their identity. And that's why Erik Erikson, who's a developmental psychologist, spoke about something called identity crisis. Who am I? With all the pressures today in schools about identity, gender identity, even cultural identity, and so on, you can imagine the confusion and the level of confusion that adolescents will be going through. Therefore, I will always come to this. They need you. They need your influence. Say this every single time I meet, with an issue in ministry. I say, how present are we as servants in the life of people? And this is a challenge because it is important that we understand that ministry isn't a job or a task, it's a presence. Jesus was not tasked to disciple. He was present with his disciples for 3.5 years, and that's why he was able to impact their lives. And we notice this when he was praying, they came to him, and after they saw over and over the way he prays, they said to him, teach us to pray. We want to pray like you. Presence is very important. And this stuckness in mid-adolescence, we found that it emerged in the late 1980s. So time when most teens are entering high school and preparing for a time when they will be living on their own, whether it be in university or beyond. Now this is stretching to uni and college years. That means that late adolescence doesn't begin till the early 20s when we speak about spiritual development for the majority of teens. What the Bible says about faith is very important. And that's why I want to divide you into 3 groups. So we'll go around, you're going to count 1, 2, 3, and then again 1, 2, 3, and then 1, 2, 3. And just remember your number because that's going to be your group number. Two. So remember your number, or do we need to do again? We're good? So group 1 will read Deuteronomy chapter 6. No, he's group 2. Oh, Peter, did you take a number? Then you group 3. Thank you, Joel. Group 1 will look up Deuteronomy chapter 6, specifically verses 6 to 9. But you can also look up verses 4 and 5. So you can go as early as verse-wise as verse 4 and all the way to verse 9. Group 2 is going to take Psalm 78. And Psalm 78, you can focus, it's a long psalm, but focus on verses 1 to 8. But you can read the whole psalm if you want, but focus on 1 to 8. And group 3 is going to take Hebrews 11, verse 29 to Hebrews 12, verse 8. So it's an overlap of 2 chapters, but one at the end of 11, starting at 29 and ending in chapter 12, verse 8. So what is it that I need you to do? In the span of 20 minutes, once we start, for the group 1, Deuteronomy 6, I want you for every one of those, for every group, to tell me what is the setting of the passage? Like what was happening? Is it a sermon setting? Is it a worship setting? What is the setting? Number 2, I want you to tell us what is the passage saying? What are the key strategies or ways to develop faith? So the passage is speaking about something to do with faith. First, what is the setting? What's going on in this passage? What is the setting? Like I said, is it a sermon? Is it, Moses sitting with 2, 3 Jews and talking to them? What is the setting? Is it a worship setting? and so on. Secondly, what are the strategies and the ways that this passage is telling you they're needed for spiritual and faith development? In other words, what is the passage proposing as a way to help develop faith in youth so that they can own their faith? Maybe there are practices that are being delineated and written in the passage. And I want you also, the fourth and last thing that I'm asking is I want you to relate this to modern life. Deuteronomy, Psalms, Hebrews, written 2,000 years plus ago, some more than 2,000 years if it's in the Old Testament, right? What does this tell us about the way we're doing things today, or we ought to do things today, or what are we doing today that is similar to what's being said biblically back in the day? In other words, you're looking at learnings or key points about faith development. Do you know what I'm asking? Any questions on what I'm asking? No? Yes? Yeah. So group one is reading Deuteronomy 6, verses 4 to 9, with a focus on verses 6 to 9. And second group is Psalm 78. So people online can pick a group and they can read on it together, or they can discuss it online together because they're on Zoom, so they can talk about it together. We can assign them group 1, for example. Yeah. Psalm 78, verses 1 to 8, and Hebrews 11:29 to 12:8. So it's 4:40. Use your time efficiently. Grasp the main points. Come back to discuss it as a group. So you have to have a speaker. You can all take notes, but one of you can be the main speaker while others can feed to that, no problem. And be prepared to ask each other questions to clarify. What we're answering generally here is what is needed for faith development. Okay? What is the setting? What are the key learnings about that? And how does it relate to today's modern time? Questions? Good. Group 1 can sit here. Group 2 can find their place over there. Group 3 can sit over here. 5:05. So a little bit over 20 minutes. 5:05. I'll call you. We have Jonathan and Kiro online. You guys were group 1 as well. So you may also participate and add. You can speak up and talk as the group 1 discusses Deuteronomy chapter 6. So tell us about the setting first.
Okay, so just for context, the passage takes place when Moses explains to the people of Israel the greatest commandment, which is to love your God above everything else. And it's basically for people within like the house context to be able to teach their children how to love your God and how to really get it in their heads.
Okay, so people of God just received the 10 Commandments. Love the Lord your God from all heart. That immediately cues you to the 10 Commandments. So they just received the 10 Commandments for the second time. This is Deuteronomy. This is the second time they're reminded of the 10 Commandments. You're right about that. And it is at the context of the family, the home, right? The house is the home, the family. Okay? You want to say something more about the setting? You're good?
Yeah.
Online people? You're not watching a movie there, are you? Yeah. Yeah, feel free to to interact. Maybe if you interact, you don't have to do the DQ later on. By the way, if you're not here in person, you have to do a discussion question online and a quiz. Just to deter you from not coming. Moses knows what? What's about to happen?
What's about to happen to the people of Israel? So Moses is talking to them just before they enter the promised land. So think of the promised land as reaching this ownership of the place. Right? So just before they get into there, there's something that is needed, which is obviously what you guys are going to talk about. Okay. And because God knows we humans and teenagers are a species of forgetfulness, we tend to do what? We tend to keep forgetting. Therefore, Deuteronomy 6. Very good. Okay, continue.
Yeah.
I'll be interrupting in and out so that I don't have to lecture on it.
Yeah, so the commandment is basically to love the Lord your God with all your heart and
About the rest of the people.
and to teach your children very diligently. So the way he talks about that is like when you sit in your house, have those conversations, when you walk by the way, when you lie down, when you rise up in the morning, you shall even bind it on your hand and as a sign on your forehead, and even write it on the doorposts of your house and your gates. And so that 24/7, your children are always in an environment that teaches them to love the Lord your God.
And what is that strategy? What is that strategy in therefore? Like, why is it therefore? Why is it important that the kids learn 24/7 about God? What is Moses, the scriptures, trying to prevent from happening with those next generation? Yeah.
Like I just said, like we're very forgetful, so reminding them like we're teaching them 24/7, like we'll ensure that they still need.
That's right. This actually has a name in education. It's called saturation education. You saturate. So when you look at the teens, when they're saturated with the influence of social media, are they not saturated? They're oversaturated. What do you see? You see the social media bringing up our kids. We see social media's influence on spirituality seen in the life of our kids. Why? Because social media spends more time with our teens than we do. How many hours do kids spend at school? 8 hours every single day for 5 days. That's 40 hours. That's a full-time thing. How many hours they spend with their parents in being educated and influenced? Beside them going into their rooms and closing the door, huh? What's left? How many times they come to Sunday school, to youth group? How, as a servant, how long will you spend with them? On average?
An hour a week.
An hour and a half. And if you go outreach, maybe another half an hour. Not for the whole group, per week, half an hour per one person, or an hour per person. So there is something about being saturated that is important in faith development. The world is doing. The people of Israel were commanded to do it. That's very important. Very good. What's next? There is another point, though, about this. Do you notice that teens and maybe adults, they tend to compartmentalize God? God is in the church, but he is not outside of the church. Therefore, my behavior in the church, or I should say not just in the church, in front of the servant, that's a compartment. Versus my behavior when I'm outside the church or away from my servant. Here, the kids are learning God is everywhere. Everywhere. He's at the doorpost when you come into the house. He's when you go out. He's when he's there. He's here. He's everywhere. Which is something that is so important when it comes to spiritual development, because otherwise I become, we'll talk about this at the end, the theory of the toolbox. So we'll talk about that at the end. But just remember the theory of the lockbox, sorry, the lockbox. People online, can you still hear me?
I am.
Yeah, we can hear.
Okay. Yeah, and I guess some of the ways we could relate this to like our modern life is to lead by example, and so that the children that we teach can see the love of God and his teachings, to make it like a core belief within ourselves, so that like we can become role models for them, and also to be relentless and patient with them, because the way it's described in this passage is that it's a 24/7 job, and it requires a lot of patience, and there's no rest. You can't sort of, take a break and say, or let them go and hope to get them back again. It's you have to consistently and diligently be teaching your children, and I think that's something that's important to remember in
And
our
on the role
service.
model, I want to relate here a story with Father Matthew the Poor. Father Matthew the Poor, the contemporary monk who passed away recently, a few years back. And he was visited, and this is written in his book, uh, Words for Our Time, I think it's called. It's a beautiful book. If you ever get your hand on it, we have it upstairs. Words for Our Time, I think it's called. He says there was this mother that came to him, and she complained about her teenage girl that she was very far from God. And Father Matthew the Poor said, all I said to this mother is, go home and start praying. Are you praying? She said, no. Do you have a relationship with Christ? Like, are you regular in your Bible reading and your prayers and you're going to church? She said, no, I'm not. She says, okay, well, I have nothing to tell you about your daughter. I'm going to tell you about you. You go home and have a prayer room and start praying and start growing. Fix your life with God, and your daughter's life will be fixed. And the mom went, came back to Father Matthew Poor at a later time, and said to him, my daughter is back to Christ because I was back. She started praying regularly. And her daughter started seeing her praying. So she got surprised. What's going on with my mom? And then when her daughter would go into any type of issues or trouble, she'd come to her mom, and her mom would pray for her. Her mom would start going to church. Her mom's life changed, became a role model. And her daughter's life changed because of the role. We're very much accused sometimes of being permissive, or being double-minded, or leading two different lives. Very important that we have congruency as servants. That's why when I get a servant who's living a life that is stumbling, or if there's anything that comes into my life that becomes stumbling, stand very firm against that. Because then I'm preaching through my life, not through my words. That's much stronger. Excellent point. What else?
Is there anything else you guys want to talk about? There was one thing at the end that I really liked, the last verse, which says, you shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. And I think that is kind of like an analogy to when the Israelites had to cover their doorposts in blood so that the angel of death can identify the people of Israel. And I think in the same way, this passage tells us to be identified by our teachings, and so that when we go to our children, when we teach them, they can see the love of God within us, and they can identify as such.
Definitely an identity. It is very easy to identify a Jew back in the day, and even today, like people speak about the Muslim hijab, right? And I was watching this YouTube the other night about Muslim babies who are being interviewed in a university. And the professor was asking them, why are you wearing the hijab? And one of them said, it just feels safer. Another one says, it identifies me as Muslim in the community, right? And that's true. You see someone with hijab, you don't think they're Buddhist. You don't think they're Christian, right? So there is something that identifies people. It used to be the cross around our necks until Christians started using it, but not professing Christianity, such as, and I don't mean, I'm not judging a person here, but I remember at my time, this is definitely way back, Madonna, the singer, she started wearing the crosses everywhere and burning them in her video clips and all that. And people start saying, okay, well, you know, you don't have to be a Christian to be related to the cross. Right? So there is some symbolic identity that we have to also be keen to bring back to the life of our youth. One of them is modesty, you know, modesty in clothing. Right? This is very important. People think, ah, this is a cultural thing. It's not a cultural thing. It's not a cultural thing. People, when they look, for example, at someone who is, like, again, with the hijab, the Islam, say, oh, they're wearing this. That's modesty for them. And sometimes the West would understand it, or quote unquote misunderstand it, I know, as oppression of women. But those two women yesterday, that YouTube I watched yesterday, they were saying, no, we feel safe in it. It's our identity. Yeah, I'm sure other people are oppressed and so on. I don't know every single one. But I'm just telling you that there is something about being identified. Our homes to be identified. Our weddings to be identified as Christian weddings. And so on. It's very important. Our conversations, our language. And so on. Good. Excellent. People online, do you want to add anything to group number 1? You may
Oh,
if you don't have anything.
I was gonna say something similar to the last point we just said about, but I think it also like increases exposure to people around us, like not even just those that are younger than us, but even people our age that aren't really close to the church. Like when we live a very godly life, we're exposing God to them in ways that
Yes.
maybe they could understand and interpret easier.
Yes. And I want to speak about the culture of the church here, which is something we'll talk about in the last course, or the one before, you know, the last module. Culture. When people enter your church, when people enter your youth group, what culture do they meet up with? Very simply, if they enter into a culture that is welcoming, they'll know it. If they enter into a culture that is judging, they'll also know. And I speak this one specifically because we're struggling with it. But it comes from where? It comes from the priests, it comes from the deacons, it comes from the servants, it comes from the homes and families, and then it comes to where community happens, such as this. So again, this speaks about the role modeling that we need to do, not so that I can judge you because you're not a role model, but so that I can help you and you can help me be the role models. This is important. Thank you. Group number 2. Guys, speak to the groups. Okay? Psalm 78.
So for the setting, we just read that it was written by Asaph, who was one of the music leaders for David, and the whole psalm is kind of goes through the history of the people of Israel from the time of Moses until the time of David, and it's all centered around the idea of breaking the cycle and learning from the past and not repeating the same mistakes. So for some of the learnings and key points, in verse, there were a few things. So in verse 5, we read that, for he established a testimony in Jacob and appointed a law in Israel, which he commanded our fathers that they should make them known to their children, that the generation to come might know them. And the children who would be born, that they may arise and declare them to the children, that they may set their hope in God and not forget the works of God. Basically, there were like 2 main things. It was first to be transparent with youth and to not put on a facade that we're perfect and not to try to sugarcoat it, because if everybody acts perfect, then the youth feel like there's no space for making mistakes. But in reality, we're all here because the church is a hospital for the sick and not for the well. And then the other thing was also in verse 3, or verse 2, I will open my mouth in a parable, I will utter dark sayings of old, which we have heard and known, and our fathers have told us. We will not hide them from their children, telling the generation to come the praises of the Lord. So while the first was about not hiding the mistakes, the second thing is also about not hiding like God's glory and God's power and might. So like, please, yeah.
Is it a song of praises and like we're gonna sing this aloud? Or is it a sermon? Or what is it?
Starts by saying give ear.
So
Saying
it is,
pay attention.
so it is
It's a sermon.
a sermon. I want to be, used in praise. This is, listen, I have a sermon here where I have something to teach you here. So the teaching moment. Very good. Excellent. Now, in that part on don't hide your mistakes, is then this passage telling us go and share your mistakes and weaknesses with other young people? Because that would be, I think, dangerous.
So we think that it was mainly particularly speaking about like parental relationships, and not like being like, okay, kid, like today I'm going to tell you everything I did wrong in my life, but in moments where there are struggles and tribulations, to be empathetic and to relate.
Listen, we're not perfect. We struggle with this. We struggle with something similar. You're not on your own here. We're all feeble and we're all weak. We all need the grace of God. Versus, oh, I did the same exact sin and worse. Which then with worship, with peer worshiping, you're actually causing some trouble here for the kids. Right?
Yeah, of course. And then the other thing was also like when we were talking about like consistently giving glory to God and not hiding this like glorifying of God pretty much. So if a youth sees that they're a parent or a servant or a mentor is consistently giving glory to God or consistently praising God, then they almost start to wonder like why is this person doing that? Like I'm kind of curious as to what's making them believe all these things, and then they get more insight and become more willing to understand this mindset. What else?
Have you noticed that something old is speaking to something new? Can you read the verse that reflects that? Something old speaks to something new.
Is it verse 2, 8? Are you thinking of verse 8? And may not be like their fathers, a stubborn and rebellious generation, a generation that did not set its heart aright and whose spirit was not faithful to God.
So, listen, there's something old here that I don't want to give up. That means there's an expectation that the new generation is better than the old generation. Sometimes we think the other way around. Oh, we, the older generation, we are like stronger in our faith, and look at our younger generation, how far they are. This is not the biblical mentality. The biblical mentality is that the disciples of St. Paul become better than him. And even said that, I wish that you are better than me except for these chains. You will do more. Yes, yes. So this is very important, but in order for the next generation to be stronger, what do they suggest? So this is called positively progressive faith development. Positively progressive faith development. As we move on to the next generation, they become better, become stronger. Because their times are going to be tough. let me ask you specifically, what are they asked to pass on? In verse 1 to 8, what are they asked to pass on? The old speaks to the new. What are they speaking? What are they passing on?
In verse 7, it says that they may set their hope in God and not forget the works of God, but keep his commandments.
Very good. What do you notice in that? That's the outcome, right? So that day, that's the outcome. So what's before it? Verse 1, 2, read it out loud. It's a beautiful song.
Give ear, O my people, to my law. Incline your ears to the words of my mouth. I will open my mouth in a parable. I will utter dark sayings of old, which we have heard and known, and our fathers have told us. We will not hide them from their children, telling to the generation to come the praises of the Lord, and his strength and his wonderful works that he has done. For he established a testimony in Jacob and appointed a law in Israel, which he commanded our fathers, that they should make them known to their children, that the generation to come might know them, the children who would be born, that they may arise and declare them to their children.
Establish the testimony. Is that what are the testimony? What is testimony? Okay, then the law, right? Testimony is the law, the witness of God's presence and his word with the people of Israel. What did God do with the people of Israel before this? What did he do with them? He helped them cross the Red Sea. He helped them escape Pharaoh. There were 10 plagues that did not touch any of them. There is a lot of experience with what God has done. Today, today's youth are saying, I want to have an experience with God. So what is your experience? If you don't have an experience with God, what are you passing on? Textbook? Material? Right, his promises, his faithfulness, as they have been experienced, that's the key word. Experienced by those people, including the experience of the wrath of God, including the experience of the care of God, because even his wrath is meant to do what for us? Always not used for food. And that made them their faith stronger. And they really need strong faith. Taking a lot of care in the eyes of him. Something always has to always represent the presence of God. The tabernacle. You notice that when the people of Israel, they were later on after King Solomon divided, which of the two nations stayed closer to God? The one that had the temple. Because of it. You go and study abroad in a place that has culture, versus a group that goes to study abroad with a place where there's an active church. What do you know is the difference in the life of those people? The presence of the old represents the ever presence of God. Very important. And in places where there are no churches, for example, I remember I grew up in Saudi. For all my childhood, but there was always a time where at the family on Sunday we had to go to work. And we had to listen to the liturgy. We listen to the liturgy until the liturgy is gone. It's the same liturgy. We have it on sex. Right? The same liturgy. It's liturgy of all that family. And we listen to it, and then we have our breakfast after. We have our prayer time, and our singing time, our fellowship time. Holy Week was amazing, even though it's even more amazing. But that is what we're talking about, is the ever existence of the reminder of God's presence and the experience that you must come to God. The youth here do not need dry sermons. They need experience. They need experiential life.
So if we can add to that, that was another thing that we were talking about, because in verse 7, he says that they may set their hope in God and not forget the works of God, but keep his commandments. So it's kind of like keeping the commandments almost comes after. You can't keep the commandments of somebody who you don't know or somebody who you haven't experienced. So it's taking an approach like exactly what you said, like introducing the youth to God, to who he is, to our relationship with him, because if that's not the basis of the service, then like who is he for me to follow him if I don't even know why I matter to him or why he matters to me.
And here I want to highlight two things. What is faith? What are the components of faith? Because you're going to answer the question of what is faith. But what are the components of faith being passed on? One is that experience. Let me tell you what God did with us. We actually traveled in the middle of water, and we could see the water standing on both sides, and the parents would tell the story because they had seen it. When you speak about God's promises, and you've seen how God fulfilled his promises in your life, you can tell others about it and they'll believe you because it comes out of someone who's experienced. That's experience. But here's the second piece that is very important about it. The statutes. Statutes means the dogma, the actual decrees and laws and commandments. It's not enough to say, oh, I experienced Jesus. Like, and this is where it's beautiful that we see, for example, people who go to the Protestant churches, and some of the Protestant churches, they're very experiential, they're very like, Jesus, my love, and that's beautiful. And what are they missing? Sometimes they're missing something very different. What? Dogma itself. Statutes of faith on which the experience is built. When you read the Bible, it's good to say, oh, what's the practical part of what I'm reading? But you cannot come up with the practical part unless you build it on the right dogma. Because if you have the wrong dogma, you have the wrong experience. And then you have to come back and say, oh, people follow Christ because of feelings. Feelings go up, they go down. But the experience must also be built on proper dogma. That's what I just want to say. Decree, laws, and commandments. Not emotion, but an experience that is built on truth, knowledge of truth. Okay, do you want to add anything else? You want to ask anything? Excellent, well done. Now, group 3, online people, do you need to ask any questions or do you need to comment on anything? Please jump in. Who's gonna leave it here? Groups 11 to 12. Go ahead.
Okay.
What's the setting? What's going on? What's the setting?
Okay, you want like a recap of what's going on?
In one sentence. What's the setting of Hebrews? What is the setting of the letter of St. Paul to the Hebrews? In other words, what is he doing with this letter? What's the purpose of the letter?
I don't know.
Yeah, he's talking a lot about the Old Testament. What's the purpose of Hebrews? You know? It's either you know or you don't.
Faith.
It's something about faith.
Okay. Oh yeah, no, that's for what faith is. But
Yeah, why is St. Paul writing this letter to start?
so, okay, I don't know. I'm guessing. I think this is a message to the people of Israel, to that God hasn't forgotten them. That what Jesus did was also for them as well.
Okay, so let me
challenge that, not everyone.
Okay.
Do you think a Jewish person will read St. Paul's letter?
No.
No. Like, seriously, if a Buddhist person writes a letter to the church, the Christian church, is the Christian church going to read it at the podium? No. So who are the Hebrews?
From what I might be.
Well, prepare to serve. Go back to prepare to serve.
He's writing to the Jews who became Christians, but they're still holding on to the Jews.
Oh, okay, yeah. That's
Yes,
true.
there we go.
That is
There
true.
you go. So he's writing to Jews who have become Christians, but because of the persecution, they went back to Judaism. And some of them started to the church in Jerusalem, or the church, the Hebrew church. It started getting
So
weaker
answer the question.
because those who started to believe, because of persecution, they started to go back to becoming Jewish. Make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Good. Go ahead. Oh, that's the sin. That's important.
So
So what's this
I
action?
misunderstood the question because it says what is needed for faith development. So
That's
then
the second part. That's the first one was what's the setting?
so I thought that was just the general question, and what was needed was what's the setting for developing faith? What's the key learning?
That's why number one said.
That's what I understood.
Faith is a substance of things hoped for. The evidence of
Oh, sorry.
the things that are
Not seen.
So that's why there was a Judeo Christian, which is weak. Are Judeo Christian when we talk about Judaism that became Christianity?
So based on that, what are the key strategies to developing faith? So we have here Jews who became believers.
Yeah.
Stress came on them of persecution. They stopped to be believers. So what are the strategies that were needed or are needed for them to remain faithful? That's faith development, right? What does St. Paul tell them?
Okay, I guess in a way the question is still sort of answered. I could be wrong, but from what I gathered, it comes from Hebrews 12:1, where it mentions. Okay, I'll just read it here. Therefore, we also, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which is so easily ensnares us, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and has sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. So
almost all the answers to my question are in that verse. Yes. But go slow. The first part.
So yeah.
Read it, but go slow. Stop.
Okay. Therefore, we also, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses.
So, what is needed?
To surround ourselves with witnesses, with people who are faithful.
To remember that we are surrounded by a cloud of witnesses. Who are the cloud of witnesses? St. Paul listed them in Hebrews 11. Who are they? Are people living with the Jews today? No. Who are they? Who are the people that he listed in the Hall of Faith in chapter 11?
The prophets.
The prophets and the saints, and Noah, and so those are the saints of the church, right? Like they are the people who lived before us, went through very difficult times. We're not unique in that sense, and yet what did they do at the end? They remained faithful. So the first point, like you said, something about the cloud of witnesses. But what about them? We gotta draw from the stories of those who have preceded us. We have to embody, we have to have this practical faith embodied in the life of the stories of the saints who preceded.
So what else we gathered was that hardships will come and that we have to go through them so that our faith can be strengthened. And through
is it so that our faith can be strengthened?
tested.
When do people, what's the purpose of a test. So you say, hey, I know everything about chapter, 1 to 5, chapters 1 to 5 in chemistry. Show me. I will test you in order to prove
That you.
Therefore, it is not about strengthening the faith, it is actually a definition of faith.
Hmm.
So a test will actually show if the faith that you claim is faith or faith.
And through that testing, or as in some of these verses mentioned later on, being chastened by God, we can let go of the weight. So laying aside every weight.
What's referred to here as weight? What's the weight? What's right?
Any burdens that we carry.
And what is he specifically tackling in terms of burden? What is the burden?
The persecution.
The testing, the hardship.
Yeah.
So often I meet with a young man or young woman, because they're going through a hardship, their faith is what? Is wavering. We gotta teach our kids that faith actually shows when you actually go through a difficult time. I think this has to be part of our main teaching, is that your faith will show when you're tested and it's difficult and it's hard and it sucks, and yet you still hold on to God. This is the whole story of chapter 11. He says, oh, look how amazing so-and-so is, how amazing so-and-so is, how amazing so-and-so. And this guy, he died before he saw the promise. And this person here, he was sawn in two, he was cut in two. And this person. And what does he say at the end of chapter 11? Did you read the end of chapter 11? Because this is key. If we teach the faith of miracles, that's so weak. Which is, unless a miracle happened, God does not exist. Unless a miracle happened, then all you've learned all your life is not true. And we live in an era of miracles, where a lot of the books that you can see in our libraries are books about miracles. That people, when they read them, they demand a miracle in their life to happen over every single problem that they go through. And if that doesn't happen, then they question it. What is St. Paul saying? What is the biblical truth that these people have?
After he gives examples of every single example, he says, and all these, having obtained all these people
of faith,
having obtained a good testimony through faith, did not receive the promise.
Yeah.
God, God having provided something better for us, that they should not be made perfect apart from us.
They lived in that faithful, despite the fact that they did not see the time of Christ yet. So people say, where is your God when you're being thrown into the fiery furnace? Well, he's going to be in the furnace. Where's your God, Daniel, when you proclaim to be a prayerful man of God who does not follow the laws of the land because they are against your faith, and you open up your window and you pray and they catch you? How come God did not make you disappear and be like a hermit all of a sudden? How come they threw you in the lion's den? And he could have been eaten as well in the lion's den. You get that? So a very important part of faith development is teaching that faith is faithfulness. I remain loyal and faithful to God despite the hardship. If we don't have this as part of our theology of developing the faith, then the first problem that our youth will encounter, what will they do with their faith?
Yeah.
I've interrupted enough.
No. Actually, you just made me think about how you know who your friends are. By going through hard things and realizing who stays and who doesn't. Anyways,
Mhm.
so
And also this reflects reflects that when Jesus said to them, "Today, all of you will leave me alone." To his disciples. But then when they received the Holy Spirit, they were ready to die. It says that St. Peter and St. John, when they flogged them, they were happy because in the name of Christ, they were flogged. What a transformation. Same people who ran away. Okay.
so the ultimate thing that we, I guess the ultimate key learning here, I suppose, which is also a kind of very easy conclusion, but keeping your eye on Christ. That was the other last thing. I don't remember which verse it was. Oh yeah, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and has sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. So we look toward what we will also receive through his torture, his crucifixion, his shame, which he turned into glory, which reflects the glory that we will also get through him.
Yes. If we remain
Faithful.
faithful.
And the last thing, how does it relate to modern society? So we kind of said that, as an example from before, that Moses was the one who um, who was a witness for the Israelites, and so many other examples that they were the witnesses for uh, the people of God to keep pushing forward and to keep moving on. In our modern society, it seems that the society is the one who is witnessing to us. And we are impacted by the lifestyle, the values, and the morals, or the lack thereof, of the world on, for example, social media and their ungodly teachings, or by the teachings of celebrities are false. And although in the case um, of being edified through chastening, it seems that in our modern society, chastening is frowned upon. And I guess lastly, they don't look to faith in a God, or even they don't look to faith in God or even in a God, but in the ability of the self.
That's very interesting. That's because a recent topic yesterday, again, in my talk to the youth, was focused on how do we become Christ? How do we choose? How do we choose as youth a Christ-centered living in a self-centered world? That speaks to what you just said, speaks to that. Yeah. Very good. I want to just, I'm not going to go through the slides, and that's the reason why I interrupted. Thank you. Excellent work. Please give yourselves a big hand. Really well done. Thank you. I want to share with you the NSYR results. This is a national survey of youth by a group called Barna. It's quite interesting. So I'm going to be reading a few things. I just want you listening. NSYR. So it's a national survey of youth religiosity, the level of religious living of adolescents. It was obvious that a teenager would naturally follow and believe what his or her parents believe. That was fine, one of the findings. Two, teens rarely think about establishing a faith that is all their own. They rarely think of that. When in college or university, they don't know where to begin growing their own faith or how. They don't know. where to grow their faith or how. That was their survey answers. American youth, American and Canadian. American young people are theoretically, this is mainly American, but I've compared it with some Canadian and it's not very far off. American young people are theoretically fine with religious faith, but it does not concern them very much. They're okay with it, but they're not concerned with it. And it is not stable enough, their faith, to survive long after they graduate from high school. So what's happening? What's needed for teens to have solid faith? Number one, able to experience God as he was meant to be experienced. Two, able to know that the presence of God is around them and that by interacting with his presence, they are growing and strengthening their faith. So telling God's stories and enacting them. When you give a talk, which you will talk about in another course, how to preach or how to give a talk to youth, there must always be a practical aspect to what you say. Why are we teaching through cases? Why are we doing group work here? Because it has to become practical. You have to understand how to do it in practice. So there always need to be, now that you talk to me about the Israelites passing through the Red Sea, why is this relevant to me? I'm not going through any Red Seas. So if the story stops at, oh, and the Israelites passed through the Red Sea, then your youth are going to say, I know the story. Didn't you say that one time? I know all the stories. Why am I coming to youth group? What's lacking is sometimes the youth group services are not delivering relevant information, or they're not relating the truth to practical living. When I spoke yesterday about the modern songs, and I spoke about SZA, and I spoke about Drake, why did I speak? I don't listen to these people. I listen to them, obviously, to do the talk. But why did I do that? I did that because I tell you, you should have seen the youth yesterday. When I started the talk, they were listening. And then just before I threw in the SZA and Drizzy, lyrics, they were about to die. They were about to go like this. As soon as I said SZA, as soon as I started, they jumped. The people at the back, they came all the way to the front and sat in front of me. Because now I'm not talking about honoring God apart from how to do it today as they're listening to their music. You get this? It has to be very practical. Your role as servants is to process the Bible for them. The Bible is the raw material. The Bible are the principles. Our role is to help them process that in a way they can live it. Okay. Churches play a vital role in faith development at any age. However, in the case of mid-adolescents, churches cannot be expected to do the heavy lifting. That responsibility falls in the hands of the parents. That's why youth ministry has 3 legs. It's a 3-legged stool. And one of those legs is parents. As much as there is the servants, as much as there is, the biblical truth, there is the parents. So we must involve parents. Mel Walker, the president and founder of Vision for Youth, states that, and I quote, the real issue here, of course, is that if parents see church attendance and church involvement as critically important in their own lives, their children are more likely to grow up with those same values. However, if parents of teenagers allow work, school, athletic involvement, or anything to come before church, sorry, I couldn't bring my child to liturgy because he has hockey. I have an issue with that. Hockey is great, but why does it become all of a sudden more important than your Sunday liturgy? Why? Explain it. Because in my mind, I've built a construct that it's important that my child becomes well-rounded. Yes, I agree. I agree to that. But why does it take precedence over Sunday liturgy? Why do I allow my kid to eat and break their fast because we're on a trip? Well, I know these things happen, but I'm just asking, what is this saying? It is saying tons of things about the value of our faith to us. Or that we don't believe that these things are necessary. What are we preaching? It's important. And these are Mel Walker, not a Coptic person. Huh? The Mel Walker is saying this. However, if parents of teenagers allow work, school, athletic involvement, or other things to come before church, the students will probably grow up with the idea that church is somewhere down the line on the priority list. If Walker is true, then it is good enough for parents to drop. Is it good enough for parents to drop off their teens to church and drive them there twice a week? Is that good enough? Is it good enough to drop off the teens and never follow up with, what did you guys talk about in church on Friday? This idea, the teens are not laundry. You don't drop them off at the store and pick them up clean. You got to work with them. You got to show attention to what they're learning. That doesn't mean that our teens don't have mistakes. All of our teens have mistakes, all of us. But a parent who sits down with their teen and say, like, you went to church and you sat in a car and you did nothing. Or you went to church and you spend the time outside. Why are you doing this? Let's talk about this. This is not acceptable for us as a family. Let's talk about this. I'm saying it with a lot of passion here, but I'm just saying, we need the parents to be parents, and we need the servants to be servants. If a servant comes in just at the time of the service and looks at their watch so that they can leave as soon as they can, what message are we sending about the value we put on what we do? Critical. Parents are also to integrate God and His decrees into every aspect of their lives. The reality, church needs to support parents to do that, to do what parents need to do. Faith development or growth begins to be owned by teens when you hear them say, I want to learn more about God. Desire within the teens to learn more than they already know. The role of us as adults is invested in the lives, to invest our lives in the lives of teens. We need to be able to recognize when teens begin having questions and must be able to lead them in such a way that they can develop their own faith. Let me conclude with the lockbox theory that the NSYR found exists in the life of American teens. And you will see that it exists here too. The lockbox theory goes like this. Teens who have only developed faith under the shelter of their parents, when they leave the home, they act as though their faith is non-existent. If a teen was not led to own up their faith and integrate the passed on faith into their own life, they move to uni or college carrying a so-called faux faith. You know, faux leather? Faux faith. They place their faith in a box. While this faith that has been developed resides in the box, they feel free to act however they wish. So you have your teenage who, let's say, lives on campus. On Monday, their faith of like Sunday night, they put their faith in a lockbox. And they go Monday to Friday, living a life that is not a reflection of their faith at all, or somehow not. I'm not saying all teens are like that. I'm just giving the example of those who need the development of faith. Come Friday, when they're about to come back, they open up the box. They take their faith and they wear it. They come back Friday night, attend tasbihah. Saturday, come to service at night and serve the kids. Sunday, go to liturgy with their parents. And come Sunday afternoon, they take off their faith, put it in a lockbox, and live from Monday to Friday a different person. This is actually what they discovered from the survey. It's called, and they termed it the lockbox theory. So the role is to help teens understand that God speaks to their whole self, not only to their church self. God accepts me and works in me in all aspects and in all situations, whether at home or church or on the street or at McDonald's or here or there, anywhere, you name it. So we need to be there for them. Availability of the servant. God, the famous word is God is not asking about your capability. He's asking about your availability. He will equip those who are present. Second, to be open, to listen and to interact. Thirdly, to be faithful, to live out our faith as a role model, as you all mentioned, in all aspects of our life. To be an example, be pragmatic, practical, not abstract. We got to love God. Well, got to love God. Let me help you as a teen show your love for God by doing X, Y, Z. Show them how to live out their faith that has been through trouble and comes out the other side intact and strong. What gives us comfort when we go through trouble? Sometimes someone who has been through trouble, who comes alongside us and say, I've been there. Hang in there. I'm right beside you. I remember Pope Shenouda, after his ordination, after he ordained us as priests, he sat down with us and he said, one of the characteristics of a successful priest is that he is present with people during their times of trouble. Because as you sit with people who are going through a tough time, you give them such a practical support by being empathetic, by being there and present with them, by being open to listening to them, by being faithful and say, don't worry, this will pass. I know, I've been there, I've been through this will pass. And you can do the same as servants. So that brings us to the end for today. I'm not going to take it to 6:30. I know it says till 6:30 in today, but I'm done. What I want you to read, though, are the following parts in your books, in your workbooks. Dynamics of Adolescence. So I want you to read Dynamics of Adolescence. You can see that obviously in your textbook. And the second part that I want you to read is Adolescent Personality and Adjustments, specifically defense mechanisms. So Dynamics of Adolescence and Adolescence Personality and Adjustment. Next time we meet, which is October 15th, I'll switch into counseling. So we build on what we understand in terms of social and religious or faith development. Now, I'm going to give you a case study. I'm going to post something up there. You're more than welcome to say comments on it if you'd like. You don't have to, so this is optional, but we'll pick it up when we come here. So if you want to say something about it on Moodle, by all means do that. And when we come back, we'll do model of counseling. We'll do a case study on substance abuse, another one on depression and defense mechanisms. That's why I want you to read personality adjustments and dynamics, those two. Any questions? Feel free to give me feedback about today, what worked, what you want more of, and so on and so forth. You can text me, you can call me. If there is anyone you know who might still be interested in this course, we have until next Sunday. If they still want to register, we'll give them access to today's so that they catch up. We have a week that they can do that, but this will be it. Next Sunday will be the deadline for it. Good? Good? Good. Yeah, yeah. You can obviously read on counseling from the other book. It's just feel free to read. The important thing is that you have to find time, which you should. It's an hour a week. If you do 1 hour per week reading, you will be done the 2 books by the time we're done this course. Okay. So or in other words, if you read 2 chapters from each book, you will be done because you will have catch up weeks later. Yeah.
chapters 6 and 8. Anyone who is read?
I need to have a look. So it's in the adolescent book. It's in the adolescent book. The dynamics of adolescence is chapter 6, and adolescence personality and adolescent adjustment. So 6, 7, and 8 in the adolescence book. You're very welcome. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your week. Feel free to text me or email me. You have that in the syllabus. You have my email in the syllabus. I'm Father Pishoy, as I said, and there's Abuna Butros, Father Butros, who will join in 3 weeks. Thank you. Bye, guys.
Buna, I had a question.
Yes.
How do we access Moodle?
Ayman can help you with that. How do we access Moodle?
Okay, thank you.